How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 2 Degrees Podcast, brought to you by the Play On Foundation. And today's guest, I'm looking forward to diving into because it's on the topic of entrepreneurship and what it takes to essentially get a business off the ground, but at the same time catching up because I haven't seen her in ages because we used to party back in the day. But everybody, it's Flo King. How you doing, Flo?
Hi, everyone. This is exciting. I actually haven't done a podcast in a long time, so
Yeah.
happy to be here.
Oh,
I,
great.
are you still in Toronto?
Oh no. I'm
No.
currently in California.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I figured at
So
like 9 o'clock. I was like, okay, so we're at a 3 hour time difference.
yeah. And
Very
I'm
cool.
also
Very
curious to hear your thoughts on like, have you ever staged like a mobile home?
a mobile home. No, not yet.
Hmm.
Are
Because
you are you are you shopping for a home stager?
maybe because there's definitely some things that I'd like to spruce up around the place, but I'm still enjoying it as well because it's still I've only been living in it for over 210 days now.
Wow, so
I did a
almost.
journal entry the other day, and yeah, day 210. So
Is that because just the cost of living is like astronomical in California, or is this something that you've
no, no,
always
no.
dreamed of?
Yeah, this was like a little passion project of mine last year where I just wanted to do something different, step out of the box, as well as explore more. So I figured
Hmm.
also because like during the quarantine, everything kind of shut down,
Hmm.
especially with travel. So I thought this would also be a neat way to travel.
Hmm.
So your dog's so cute.
I was trying to lock him up before this all started, and he
Yeah,
kept on running away. So this is him just, being
that's so
defiant
cute.
and making
Uh,
his appearance.
Flo is currently sitting down, and the dog jumped up on the couch with his cone, and he's scratching himself. So, little descriptive TV for all you listening in. But yeah. So starting off, what in your mind drew you to become an entrepreneur?
I mean, it started, I guess, just the idea of watching my mom do her thing. She was immigrant from Vietnam, and she kind of made her way over to Canada. And she always had this like knack to just do stuff on her own. She worked full time
Mm,
to support, me as a single mom, but she was always doing something on her own, whether it was like cosmetics or like she's a psychotherapist.
mm,
She's always had this knack for like small business.
yeah.
And so having seen her do that, I was just having that conversation today actually, where it's like, um, we are the generation that's kind of stuck in between like an OG frame of mind where it's like you have to go to school and work hard and make a living and like support your kids and hope to see them through school and university. And then the millennials, like Gen Z, of the people who just like don't want to work at all, or maybe from their phone, and hope that everything kind of pans out. And we're kind of like in the middle. So I'm like, I'm doing the full-time gig. And then because that full-time gig isn't as fulfilling as say working on my own project, that's kind of how I've channeled my creative energy to these small business aspirations that I've been having throughout my journey here.
Mm,
So, having said that though, because I wouldn't knock a full-time gig, that has allowed me to fund a lot of my side businesses in order to make them thrive. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I'm not struggling in the sense of financing my ventures, so I've kind of used that as a financial blanket to fund all of my other entrepreneurial endeavors.
Hmm.
You
Was that
know,
always the mindset? And I asked from the position of speaking to especially artists, they kind of shit on full-time jobs, part-time jobs. And
Right.
I get it because, you know, you want to do your art, you want to pursue your passion, which is great. But then there's that need to wrestle the fact that you also need to fund, you know, your passion in order to do
Right.
your passion. And because we live in a society where you need money,
Hmm.
having a job isn't bad.
Right.
Did you
And
have to get over
and
that
I guess
hurdle?
I guess this also applies to kind of like any discipline. Like if you're trying to be an actor and like, you know, you see them like bartending or whatnot or waiting tables, you know what I mean? There's like,
Hmm.
there always has to be this source of income, so to speak, to kind of finance your dreams.
Hmm.
And really, I've been caught in this cycle. And I think COVID really did emphasize this piece where it's just like, is this something I want to do for the rest of my life, like working full time? Do you know what I mean? Or do I take that leap and like really try and pursue my small business and like to do it seriously, where it's like I need to like really jump off that bridge. And I'm really at this crossroads right now.
Mm.
So funny that we're talking about it now, where it's just like I've never put myself in that position where it was like I won't have a steady source of income, you know. So my brain hasn't really gone into mode. I have to get, you know, creative. I have to start looking for, you know, more sales. I have to start you know, doing more things to try and generate, you know, revenue. Like it's never been that way for me. And
Mm.
I feel like that has impeded my process in this journey. And I feel like
Mm.
COVID now that we're coming to the end of it, has really like opened my eyes to see, you know, the value in the work that I put in as an entrepreneur, and like how much more I could be doing if I wasn't so worried about my full-time job.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, with that, especially in entrepreneurship and even within the arts, there does come a point where you do have to leave the job to pursue the passion,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Especially if you're getting to a point where, you know, you're you're making strides.
Right.
And that's also within the artist community too, where actors need to take some kind of ownership where are you free enough to do all of your auditions? If you're not, you need to realize you need more time. So you need to either get a better job on the side that allows you that, or you need to let go of the job, right?
Exactly. And I think that also comes with like the power of believing in yourself and doing a Kanye kind of thing where it's like, I know I'm going to be, you know, I know I'm going to be good. I know I'm going to be famous. I don't care what anyone says. And like, I actually just took in like the first part of his Netflix series,
I haven't yet. I still need to.
documentary. And like, it really did like open a lot of, I guess, like, you know, a lot of things that I never seen before coming from him, because all you see is, you know, him and chasing down Kim and, you know, being all crazy and blasting their business on Instagram.
Yeah.
But like I really respected the fact that, you know, like he really, you know, went where all the, you know, where all the action was happening. He like picked up himself, he moved to New York, and then like, you know, he was soliciting his album, and like no one was paying him any mind.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, this is Kanye. And I was just like, you know, made that be more self-reflective of me, where it's like, hello, Flo, like, you know, you've been doing it for so long, you've had these businesses, you know, they failed, some have, you know, succeeded and thrived, and yet still you will not let go of this job because it doesn't seem like you really believe what you're capable of.
Hmm.
You know, and even in my seasoned age, it's become, you know, it's become it's become a roadblock.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, so it doesn't necessarily go away with experience.
That's fair.
Like, but I should be feeling a lot more confident than I'm feeling right now. And I don't know if that's kind of like I don't know, a self-preservation type of mentality, but I feel like, you know, even having this discussion with you. It's like, yes, Flo, you have to start, you have to start believing in yourself to, to conquer and thrive and, do so much more.
Well, even with that, where you have this confidence, but at the same time, the confidence doesn't seem true because you're not letting go of the job. But
Yeah.
I've had this discussion too, where's the line in confidence where you still need to understand that you have work to do? Because I think that's the blurring line where a lot of people step out and take the leap, but in reality they're overconfident, and then they don't think that they need to work on themselves more because they think they have what it takes, and whatever they already have is what's going to push them over the edge to success, when it, unfortunately, within this industry of dreaming, that's not the case, right? You kind of have to keep that humbleness to it. So in your opinion, since you're going back and forth of should I leave the job and should I not, where do you think that line is?
I'm gonna have to be honest, because I have spoken about this to like other entrepreneurs who've left the corporate world to pursue their entrepreneur ventures too. And like there's like this formula where they say, once your small business starts making more money and plus than your full-time, that's when you should be comfortable leaving. And I feel like, does that really happen? Because for me, I'm just like, and I guess, it depends what you're making at your corporate job. But for me, it's like, it hasn't happened yet. I've been close many times, but there hasn't been like a solid benchmark to say, hey, you're pulling in 200K. So, time to leave. And like, even with the onset of, say, our network television show, like to other people, they would have said, Flo, like there's big networks that have now given you your own TV show. You don't think that's it's never enough for me. And I don't know if that comes from like the background that I was raised, like, Asian parents. It's like, even if you come home with like an A, it's like, how come it's not an A plus? Or like, how come you didn't get straight A's? And it's like, to me, it's like, I've been groomed to think like, there's always more work to do, and it's like ingrained in me, where it's just like, I can never enjoy the fruits of my labor because I'm always worried about what more could I have done to, be successful. And so I, this obviously comes down to me and my own thinking and self-talk, where it's like, I'm getting in my own way of my, of my development. Right. And I think a lot of the times we do suffer from that, because I've heard a lot of things from like people saying, like, it's not perfect, so I'm not ready to launch it yet. And I've been preaching like, guys, it's, there's never going to be a perfect time to do X. And it's like, here I am telling that to other people and I'm not practicing it myself. You know what I mean? So it's just like, and I was like, wait a minute, I know him, like, and I've been hearing about like, your castings and you doing your acting thing and so on and so forth. And it's like, I seen you on TV and I'm like, well, shit, he finally did it. He moved to California. He moved to Hollywood. Like, he's doing it. And it's just like, where can I get those kahunas? You know what I mean? Like, how do I get there like that? It's like, you have also been inspiration to me in that sense, where it's like, you're doing it. You're doing what you've set out. You're pursuing your dreams and you're pursuing your passion. Again, I can contribute. I mean, I can attribute that to COVID, and just saying, do I want to be here doing this for another 20 years until I retire? Probably not.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like, this is just something
with
like
that, you've been at this for years, so you must
doing
have gotten
different things.
but you must have gotten better at managing that mindset.
For
So
sure.
I'm curious to know what it was like before.
Like I feel like I was much like more inexperienced. And
Mm,
so that like allowed me to be a little bit more naive about people,
mm,
about the industry, about, you know, when people say things and they mean it and, keeping their word and not it being like a legal document that should have been signed and, you know,
yeah.
and to me it's like, wow, like I've been burnt many times because I didn't
Mm,
take the time to hire a lawyer for them to draft up the contract, for them to, sign, and then for me to come and sue them later on when they did me wrong.
So
It's like
with
take
that
that out.
lesson though, because like I know a lot of entrepreneurs and myself included, where the talk of lawyers is a thing.
Yeah.
When are lawyers meant to be a thing? Where it's like, at what phase of your venture should you start incorporating lawyers?
Yeah. Um, and I'll add to that, like just incorporation in general of your
Mm,
business,
mm,
where it's like, it's no longer a hobby. You're liable for people's safety, so you need to look into, incorporating your business. And really, that costs a month. Like that costs money. It's
yeah.
not cheap. And then you also have to think about the tax implications of that, where it's like you have to pay an accountant to do your books, on for a corporation rather than just you and your personal tax. And there's like a lot of things that you have to consider, once you are ready to take that leap, because that's not something you do, with your online store on Instagram. Like,
Mm,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So it's like if you have built up, I guess, like a reserve fund to do that, like I would say you would at least need like 10 to 15,000 to like get a proper shareholders agreement if you have partners for your corporation. And I'm talking about like as soon as money starts being exchanged, when you're making investments or you're putting in money into your business, like that's when you need to call the lawyers, because everybody's happy in the beginning. Nobody's
Mm,
fighting. Everyone's just getting along. And you're like, I would never do that to you.
mm,
We're friends. You know what I mean? And it's just like, boom, a year later, things start happening. People don't know how to manage their communication. It's a he said, she said. And, you could tell I've been through a lot.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it's just like, if you do it from the beginning, save yourself the stress. You know, I've also been told, like, like, Flo, why don't you just stop working with people? You know what I mean? And it's just like, is that realistic?
Yeah.
Is that realistic? It's like, because me, I'm very trusting of people. And that has also been, my downside, where it's just like, I put my trust into people who don't deserve it.
Fair.
And, like, I don't like hold it against anybody else, because honestly, that's also not a good way to live, where it's just like, I have my guards up and, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like
Mhm.
it's never been like that. Like I've always seen people for who they are and like hope that they have a good heart. Um, and in business, apparently that doesn't really exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So
So, I mean, the business that's going well now is the one that I've, worked with my sister, like Nicole. Like me and her grew up since we were elementary school, and like it's family run. So her mom's in there, her brother's in there, like, and that's kind of like the only time, like the business that, again, that has survived through COVID, that has survived through arguments and so on and so forth, is one that I've been running with, like people that I grew up with since I was a kid,
mhm.
you know? And I
Yeah.
know like there are successful partnerships there that people, forge while they're like, in school, or they meet on another job, or, so I know it can exist. It hasn't happened for me,
Yeah. Fair.
and I know everybody's journey is different, but be aware
Yeah.
is, is the tidbit there, I guess,
Mhm. What
of
are
what it is
what are
that
some
you're working.
pros and cons um from going and working in a brick and mortar establishment to now working online?
Mm, I mean, online is like, as far as like rich and poor home is,
Mhm.
there isn't, everything's on site. So if we're staging, we're actually pulling furniture from the warehouse, and then we're practically moving it into whatever house that we're staging. um but if we're talking about, like, I don't know, partners versus yourself, right?
Mhm.
Especially like in a brick and mortar, like in a restaurant environment, like there's just one person, there's only one person, and it's like there's so much work to do that there's just no way anyone could accomplish that without a team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like in any type of environment that requires like a physical space, in that sense, it's like you need people to lean on, because otherwise you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to go into a depression, and like who knows what happens after that. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it's like, for me, I've always seen it as a plus if you were able to partner with people who have the same, who have the same, that has the same drive as you, that
Yeah.
has the same intent, uh, intentions as you, who thinks like you, and who wants to like thrive and have the same goals as you. But like I
Yeah.
said, over a certain, like a specific span of time, when things start, like when shit starts hitting the fan, it's like, how do you manage that in a respectful way and still come out with some solutions,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
feel like, I mean, like they need to teach this, like they need to teach conflict resolution in like schools, like
Yeah.
just like how they teach math, or like, only now have they started talking about finances. You know what I mean? Like teaching
Mm.
that in schools, but they need to start teaching like conflict resolution and how to deal with, people. Because
Fair.
it can't just be fly by the seat of your pants, hope that everyone thinks rationally when they're angry, um and like, is up for finding solutions,
Mm.
because that has not been my experience ever when it comes to when it
Yeah.
comes to like conflict um in the workplace,
Yeah.
you
Now,
know
you brought up an interesting point where it's about school
yeah.
and things that should be taught in school. Entrepreneurship, what are some important lessons you think need to be shared and like to anybody?
Yeah, I think having that third eye and just being able to like kind of foresee not just problems, but like happy day scenarios too. I think being able to like be proactive in the way that you think, hey, do like, what is going to happen if I do scenario A or scenario B, and start working those out in your mind, to be able to have kind of like a plan. And I also say that in respect to like being able to research, do your research, because a lot of people start jumping into like into small businesses, kind of like only seeing what they see on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube.
What's a few things that
Talk
you've learned you need to research?
yeah, like be able to like ask questions, seek out mentors, mentorships from people who've been in the business. And I think that also like falls in line with the idea of humbling yourself and being like, and knowing when to ask for help and say, hey, like, because everyone wants to beat on their chest and like, I make X amount of money, so I don't need to ask anybody for help. And like, and it's like, for me, it's like, we would be able to do so much more if we worked together as like, a community, as opposed to just everybody's fending for themselves. And it's just like, that's considering everyone competition. And like,
Yeah.
you know, like that to me, I felt was I felt that that pressure to be like, holy, nobody wants to help.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's like a Toronto thing, or you know what I mean, because I've lived in this city my entire life. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And it's like, it isn't until you leave that everybody kind of recognizes.
I think it's a very Canada thing because it's the same in
Mhm,
Vancouver.
mhm,
And the thing that I love about the States is the willingness to collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
People
Mm-hmm.
are people see somebody that has a like mind and they want to collaborate. But in
Mm-hmm.
Toronto, it's very crab in the bucket, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand it personally.
Mm-hmm. But then do you find like once you achieve like success, like everybody starts popping out the woodwork and be like, oh yeah, like, hey, I've seen you grow and I've seen you doing your thing, and you know, you feel like you want to collaborate on something now, and it's just like, what are we
Because like
talking about?
with that, like I genuinely feel like it's now we're back to the topic of confidence, where everybody has this confidence of, oh, I'm the shit. And
Mm-hmm.
they see somebody else working on whatever it is, and it could be a similar thing, and they look at that and they're like, yo, I'm better than that. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you've made it, and you've made it doing the thing that y'all both were doing, then it becomes
Mm-hmm.
like, oh man, that's what I want to be. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna reach out and try to,
Right.
and it's a weird mentality, and I
Right.
especially I don't know, it follows trend of the entertainment industry,
Mm-hmm.
where Toronto's entertainment industry, especially Canada's entertainment industry, especially, it's like you have to leave to make it. And in order to
Mm-hmm.
leave, you kind of have to do it solo.
Right.
And it's, yeah. So, and then I feel that when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's the same mindset, where it's like, oh, you have a dream and you want to follow your dream. Well, become successful and then we'll talk, as opposed to let's kind of build each other up together. And yeah, it's a weird mentality, and I think it circles back to that issue of getting a lawyer, where it's like everybody's a crab in the bucket thing.
Right.
So
And I mean, this, I just to kind of circle back to what you were asking, and that is like, what do you really need to learn? And then it's like, again, it's like, humbling yourself and being able to do the research, and like, also I would add to that kind of just the idea of knowing how to talk to people.
hmm,
You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if it's like the art of persuasion, so to speak, but it's like if you're looking for something and you need it from somebody else, it's not like, hey, I know you do this, so do you think you can help me out? Like, you know what I
yeah,
mean? There's kind of
yeah.
like levels to it, where it's like introduce yourself and like get to know them, and like at least act like you care about them, like outside of their business, rather than just coming and asking. And it's like, there's some like tenacity to the idea of asking people for favors,
Hmm.
you know? So I find
W-
that a lot too, where it's like, hey,
What's
Flo, can
what's
you come and
what's
do
your
this for
opinion on then? So for me, if I know you're coming to me for something, I'd rather you ask directly.
me?
Like maybe it's back to, what you're saying, where it's like it's the art of persuasion or whatever, and but
Yeah.
knowing just how to talk to people, where I can tell when people are trying to do small talk to
Mhm.
lead to a question or a favor, where I
Right.
would rather that be the first thing you ask
Mhm.
for, and then we can catch up. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I've obviously experienced both ways, but it's just like, it's not like a, hi, can I get something from you first, but it's like a, hey, how you been, like, how you been, like. And it could be as simple as that.
Hmm.
Like, you don't need to know about my mom or my family or my dogs, but it's just like, oh, like, get to know me on a level where it's just like, oh, or even introduce yourself, hey, I work for this marketing company, and you know what I'm saying, I think I've seen you do work in that industry, so do you think we could I don't know, share ideas on that front.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I like, it can't just be that all the time, because then it's like, I know even Kanye had written like a little quotables book, and I don't know why I'm quoting him so much, but it was kind of just, if you're not if people don't find you useful, then you're useless. You know what I mean? And I was
People
like,
don't find you useful, then you're useless. Huh. Okay.
do you know what I mean? So I guess in that sense, where it's like, you hold value if people are coming and asking you for things,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
But it's like, what kind of thing? Even if it's just your opinion, it's just like, I didn't 20 years to start giving my opinion out for free, like, you know. And it's
Yeah.
like, where is that balance where it's like, you know, like as you said, where it's like, you know, I would prefer someone to just be direct, ask me a question rather than just like small talk.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a fine line, to be honest. And it's just like, I guess it's like on a case by case, but it's just like, for me, it's like, you know, they always say, hey, like at least say hello, good evening before you do, you know, say whatever you have to say. It's like,
There. Yeah. Yeah. So like it circles back to like that small talk, and it's like, what is appropriate small talk, I guess. Because like it's funny when it's like,
because no, but you see, even do you see like even like the old boys club where it's like, oh, they go golfing or they go see a hockey game, or they, you know what I mean, like what's our equivalent? What is our equivalent of being able to like, hey, like invite you out for a drink, or like, I don't know, talk to you know, I don't know, go to a bar or something? Like what would then be considered our equivalent in our day and age?
Yeah.
To warm me up a little.
Yeah.
Like there has to be something, or at least something in common to talk about. Because I even find like, you know, like even when you're at like these like networking events, it's like it would be very strange for me to come up and say, hey, I know you're a video director, so can you come shoot some video for me? Like it's not gonna happen. They're gonna be like, who are you?
Yeah.
And like what do you think this is? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't work that way. So it's like, again, the art of just knowing how to approach people, how to talk to people, to, you know, to like try and fulfill some sort of ask.
What was your experience like with being able to ask people for help?
It was tough, man. I will say, like specifically if we're talking about like business ventures, like Dirty Bird, I had no idea. I was not a restaurateur. I mean, my partners were chefs, or still are chefs, but you know, they had a lot more experience than I did. And for me, it was like a lot of just trying to seek out people or owners of restaurants to be like, hey, like, what was your experience? And even then it was just awkward, because it's just like, they see this young girl coming up and they're like, they don't know what my intentions are. They don't know me from, you know, they don't know me from a hole in the wall. So it was very hard. And I still feel like, you know, depending on who you're being introduced by, like if someone says, oh, like gives you a cosign before the introduction. Oh, okay, well now, you know what I mean? Oh, okay, well this guy co-signed for you, so I know you're good people. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's very rare that you'd be able to cold call someone or go up to them just, you know, willy-nilly and be like, hey, do you mind if I pick your brain for a minute? You know, so for me, I grew up zero mentorship. And, you know, like I've tried to turn that around for myself, because like I do volunteer, mentor like young women of color. And this is not just for business only, but life events and business and high school, and, you know, like boys and stuff like that. Because I know what it was like to not be able to ask anyone for help that way, you know? So like I tried to like, I guess rejig that narrative to be like, hey, I'm helping people or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You brought up a point earlier, when dealing with failures. When I think of failures, I associate that with a feeling, and that feeling being depression.
Yes.
I'm curious to know what kind of depression you faced within the realm of entrepreneurship. And how did you deal with it?
I've definitely been there. And it's like, you know, like,
do you remember what led to those moments?
Yeah, like basically, you know, not being able to contribute as much as I could financially into my business to save it. You know, I feel like that really put me in a bad space, mentally, physically, spiritually. I feel like, you know, I had my support system, but like when it comes to that type of feeling, it's like, it really is in your mind. And it's like, you know, me consistently beating myself up about not being able to do the best I could. And it took me a while. Well over a year, to get back to the table and try and pursue something different. And even then, it was a constant struggle. And I fear that for a lot of entrepreneurs, because again, it's not something that's talked about regularly. It's not something that, even for myself, I only talk about it now because I'm well again. But it also took me a long time to get to this point where this is real. It's like, we don't normalize the idea of it being a part of, our day to day. It's like, oh yeah, she was depressed, man. And then we kind of just let it off. And I think only recently, because, in light of COVID, it has been brought to the forefront where it's like a big deal. It should be, taking that into consideration when we're making decisions and whatnot. You know what I mean? So it's like, it took me a long time. I did speak, and I still do speak to a professional about it. There was a time where I was on meds to kind of just, to kind of like level out the chemical imbalance in my brain. But that is just definitely not a first, that's a last resort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what, it happened recently again, like with the start of COVID, where it was like, I had, I traveled a lot. I went out a lot. I have, a lot of friends. For me, everything that I've known my life to be was taken away. That really drove me into a depressed state as well. So I think, in adding to that list of how to cope with failure and like disappointment, and just when things aren't going your way, don't just run and hide, like seek help, talk to your safe people. Try and be as proactive as you can be, and I say that knowing that it's very hard, definitely not easy, and like it's definitely part of the entrepreneurial journey, and like knowing that the first time doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the one idea that brings you to the top. Like they say, like it takes about like an average of 7 to 8 attempts to really be successful in what you're doing. You know what I mean? So it's like, what I've gone through is deemed to be normal in that of an average entrepreneur. And I don't know if there's a way to kind of eliminate that part, because honestly, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. You know what I mean? And it's a really hard place to get out of once you're there.
I don't think there's any other real way to navigate avoiding that emotion and that feeling, because it comes from rejection. And back to what we were talking about earlier, where you need a certain level of confidence. That fall from that mountain of confidence is always going to result in some kind of depression. So I think just even back to what you were saying, where things need to be taught, like along with conflict resolution, I think understanding how to deal with your emotions when you're at a low is also super important. So
I totally agree. Agree.
So you started, not started, but you were trying to keep a business going during COVID, which you have, which is amazing. But what was some of the hurdles that you had to face, especially let's start with R&P Homes, where when did R&B Homes start, and what's your goal with it? What do you hope to bring of it?
I think, well, it started with me and Nicole kind of just wanting to like have some sort of like, I don't know, formalized process of how we're approaching like interior design. And so like, she was flipping residential houses. So, she was buying old homes and then kind of gutting the whole thing and then, rebuilding it back and selling it for a profit. And for me, my whole thing was I just had an interest in like commercial spaces and like restaurants and other people's offices and like spaces in their home. And again, just being naive and not knowing what was to come, we're like, yay, let's start a business.
So you started this while you were still at Dirty Bird?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was in 2016. And honestly, like you said, it was kind of like the momentum of like Dirty Bird success and like me being able saying, hey, like I started Dirty Bird and like it's going well. So let's start a new business, right?
Okay.
Not knowing what it would have taken, because honestly, I know, Nicole tells me every day, kind of just like, Flo, you have too much on your plate. You're doing too much. You don't have time for all of these things. And me, I'm like, I'm Superwoman. I can do everything. And I don't need sleep. Hustle, hustle, hustle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, right? That's the kind of mentality we had where it's like, you just, you're there's no enemy that can come and take you down.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, again, for me, like life started happening. Dirty Bird started going the opposite way. And so like, again, that's kind of how I ended up there. But that kind of was like a silver lining though, I feel like, so even though one business was failing, I still had this other business that was kind of like, thriving. And it was fun because I got to, do it with my best friend. Yeah. So we, anytime we were together, I'm like, this can be work. Yeah. I get to work with my best friend. Like, why wouldn't I consider leaving my full-time job to do this full-time? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, that's kind of how it evolved. And then boom, we're like here on major network talking about reality TV and like, and it's amazing. It has been an amazing evolution of just kind of where we started and where we thought this was going to go. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I say all that to say like, maybe, it is time for me to start really thinking about what it is I'm going to do for the next 20 years of my life, because I don't see it happening where I am on a full-time basis. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's go more into that. So HGTV, what are we to expect of working with them?
So the series is called Styled, and the hosts are Nicole and Caffery. And we're kind of like fusing, like fashion, like clothing, and fusing it together with like interior design, home staging, home renovations. And more importantly, we're trying to add some spice to that network where they see people of color. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because if you turn it on to HGTV, it's looking really snowy on there. So it's like, we want it to be like young people own their own homes. Young people have money to renovate their homes. Young people are homeowners. Like, so we're doing a lot to kind of push this narrative for like people of color to do their thing.
Yeah.
And like it be on a major network to say, hey, it may not be multi-million dollar homes, but we're still dealing with the millions. Mm-hmm. So what's the problem? You know what I mean? And we deserve a space to be able to do these things and do it with pride and not be restricted into like the way that they are so familiar of, way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I think, it'll be fun, and hopefully, people will tune in, because I think it's, it's a big, huge accomplishment for like everybody in our neighborhood, so to speak, where it's like, hey, we have representation now, in this space. And it's important because it's like, honestly, like, you don't see homeowners like us on TV.
Yeah.
you know?
So I can't help but like think of HGTV when it comes to those home shows
Mm-hmm.
where they have these guests or these people on there with these outlandish expectations for what they can actually afford.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Mm-hmm.
what, in your opinion, then can help a first-time home buyer find something that they can afford, but at the same time, it look amazing?
I think the idea of just I don't want to say like you work to like purchase your house, because it should never be that way.
Hmm.
You know, I don't feel like it should be check to mortgage payment, you know, because you're not going to enjoy yourself that way. And I feel like I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not a realtor in that sense where it's
Yeah,
like, you know, because housing here specifically in Toronto has been bonkers, and it's just
yeah,
like it doesn't make sense. It's like we're talking about, you know, the same homes that we're selling for, I don't know, 400, 500,000 are now up to 1 million, and it's just like it's
yeah,
a crisis going on right now. And I don't know if I have any advice in that realm where it's like, you know, save up your coins and hope that and pray that
hmm,
the prices don't go up when you're, you know, when you're ready to buy.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But I know in the sense that there's always an, you know, there's always a more cost effective solution to
hmm,
anything when it comes to home development.
yeah,
And I'm not saying like skimp out on like building the foundation of your house. I'm just talking about there's, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay like $10,000 for the same couch that you could probably find for half the price. You know,
hmm,
Facebook Marketplace has been a really good source of like source for furniture, one
yeah,
of a kind pieces, and you know, not breaking the bank and still achieving a look.
gotcha.
And you know, like if the goal is you want to buy your own home, then so be it. And like, yeah, be diligent in the way that you save your money and you know, purchase the house that you like, you know, go in stages. It does, your first house doesn't necessarily mean it's your forever home,
Yeah,
you know, but get into the game. Get into the game if that's, again, if that's something that you want to achieve, like buy a condo and hope um that, not hope, but pay into your mortgage so that when you outgrow that condo or whatever it is, you know what I mean, you'll get
yeah,
that money back, as opposed to just paying rent and moving out and then you don't see a dime. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Now,
Like I've never been an advocate for paying rent, and
yeah,
obviously everyone's financial um you know, financial situation is different, so I'm not here to say one way or the other, but
yeah,
when you were talking about real estate and stuff, like it doesn't work out in your favor when you just rent.
hmm, fair. Yeah, no,
Mhm.
I get that for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Or they can do like you and like do the mobile home thing, because I think that really is a great idea of, you know, being able to travel, like you said, being able to
yeah,
travel cross country and like not be married to, you know, one place in the city of, you know, and just having to return there all the time. Your house is
yeah.
with you. You drive with your house. And
The
I'm seeing that more and more, to be
the
honest.
only downside to this lifestyle is like you can't really live anywhere where it's cold.
Right.
So
Hello,
that,
hello, hello,
yeah,
sir.
exactly.
Nobody likes, you know, to live in the cold. So my friend, you are living the dream already. Because right now it's like -10 and I'm freezing and it's
Yeah,
like, it's
no,
not
thank you.
nice. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm slowly losing my Canadian edge where it's like it's 10 degrees outside Celsius
Hmm.
and it's like, oh, it's too cold here. And I'm like, No, this is so much better than being in Canada.
And here we are, it's like, oh, it's 10 degrees. No jacket, freedom.
Right?
You know?
uh, so back to RMP Homes now.
Mhm.
Staging.
Yeah.
What is your influence when it comes to staging? Do you steer in a particular direction of like paying attention to culture? Do you analyze a space and try to just be true to the space? Do you try to give it a Flo King appeal? And if you do, like, what does that look like?
I mean, for the most part, when you are staging, you are trying to appeal to the most potential buyers.
Hmm.
So really you are removing anything, like you're depersonalizing the space. You're going to make it so that, you know, it's not a blank canvas in the sense that there's no furniture, but you want to be able to like craft it in a way where there's furniture and that buyer can see themselves using that space.
I always
For
thought staging was building a space and kind of showing its maximum potential. Is that
right.
completely off?
The potential of that buyer being able to use it in the same way that you're decorating it as, because like a simple analogy is like, oh, if you see a t-shirt that you want to buy in the store, are you going to buy it if it's laying on the floor, or are you more likely to buy it if it's on a model mannequin standing in the window dressed, you know, nicely and accessorized?
Okay. Would
You
you
know what I
ever
mean?
restage the same space differently when another buyer comes in?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Because again, ideally the purpose of your staging is to be able to design it in a way that appeals to the most buyers.
Gotcha.
So even the style that I know for us, like it's niche in that it's very modern, modern and not like, and contemporary, as opposed to like traditional and I don't know, farmhouse like
Can
modern
you break
mid-century.
down like the difference between a space, like what makes a space modern and what makes a space traditional?
Well, traditional, like, you know, in the sense that there's a lot of like, um, I don't know, like curvy furniture, wood furniture. You know, in a lot of traditional spaces, you'll find a lot of like dark woods furniture. And like when you're talking like from a modern perspective, like it's usually like white walls or like really like bright pot lights, and it's really bright and airy in that sense.
Gotcha.
And then like traditional, you still have carpeting in, you know, on the main floor, or you'll have you know, I don't know, solid wood furniture, or like, you know, upholstered or leather, like heavily upholstered couches. And modern, you would find like, you know, very clean lines, very minimal, you know, minimalistic type furniture concepts.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's very different in that way, where I mean, you know, like I'm just even looking around in my space when there's a lot of abstract art. You know, it's not a lot of like people in it. So it's not like Renaissance in that way, where you
Where
have
did
like
you learn that?
in my style. I
Yeah.
mean, we went to college for it. So we have our, you know, we have our home staging diploma or certificate. But really it was more of a personal style. And I think the way that I've lived heavily influenced the way that I approach like home staging and interior design. You know, so our style is really, really modern in that way. You
So
know,
you do staging, but then do you also do interior design where now you can kind of give your own flair?
I would never say like own flair, in that there's always someone to answer to.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like the client is always going to have the final say. So we can make our suggestions and our best, best selections, but at the end of the day, the client's going to say, oh, like we want to go with this instead. And it's just like, hopefully we have presented the right options for them to, like, doesn't matter what they pick, it's still going to look nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's that art of persuasion to be able to say, okay, like, here, I'm giving you 3 options. I really like this one, but I can see it going this way. And like being able to say, hey, this can go either way, and not feel bad about, it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we can definitely add, our preferences in the selections that we present to the client. And hopefully we're working in tandem with the client. You know what I mean? Like we're able to, like, I don't know, I guess that also goes with selecting the client. You know what I mean? Because if I know this person's not, thinking on the same wavelengths and their style is way off, like I don't even think we would like pursue the project. You know what I mean? Because it becomes extremely difficult when it's just like every choice or every selection that has to be made is being challenged, or like it doesn't work in that way.
Do you have any nightmare stories?
Not so much nightmares. I just think the idea that conflict exists every which way, whether it be, in your life or professionally or through friends, like it's how you deal with the conflict is what's going to set you, set you above anybody else. Cause it's like, if they're ripping your head off and you're ripping back their head off, like it just doesn't work. But if you decide that, okay, I'm going to acknowledge this person and his feelings and, come up with solutions in a very calm way, then, like work can still continue on. Because I've had clients that yell and scream. And for me, it's just like, I don't operate this way. So I'm going to let it cool off.
Yeah.
And then we will revisit, and it's just like,
what led to the yelling and disagreement?
I think just the expectation that things would be done when they said they were going to be done. And I think, given the climate of COVID and say supply chain management, it's a lot to deal with, like, and this is just recently, and now it's just having to reinforce that, hey, like you had to call out because you were exposed to COVID, and my contractor is immunocompromised, and it's just like he can't be around that. Wow. Or I got COVID and I can't be on site. Like it was a nightmare.
Wow. Yeah.
Absolute nightmare. And just being able to communicate, what's going on, and having the receiver understand what the message is. And it's not because we're avoiding work. It's like people are legitimately sick.
Yeah.
Or things are just not available, and we have to like source out another option. Like, and this is just real life, but like the project's done, but I feel like, the relationship between me and the client kind of just ends there,
Gotcha.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah. You mentioned you were involved like doing commercial spaces. Are there any spaces that like you're particularly proud of?
I think Dirty Bird was kind of like the one that stands out the most because there were multiple locations, and like, I think when you talk about franchising, the scariest part is being able to recreate the feeling over multiple times without jeopardizing the look and feel that people are so familiar with the first location.
Yeah.
But having said that, I'm pretty sure, of the, 5 locations, only 2 of them still exist.
Yeah.
And that's the one like at downtown in Kensington Market, and they just opened one in Mississauga.
Were you a part of it when it went to the airport?
I did. That was the last one I did. And the airport, obviously they have their own restrictions, so we weren't very free to make those kinds of decisions. Really, it was just the signage, you know, and that too was a big accomplishment, because it's like, you know, us, you know, born and raised in like ghetto neighborhoods, and then finally having something that people will see when they go Terminal 1, you know what I mean? Like that was huge.
Yeah.
That was huge. You know, and I'm glad to
What
say
were
that's on
some
my
of the
resume.
things that you had to face that you didn't? Because like, considering all of the restrictions that are in place at an airport, I can only imagine how much more difficult it is to like get your food in and for your
Yeah.
employees to work there. What was some of the hurdles that you didn't expect going into working at an airport?
I mean, my time there was short-lived. From what I understand, though, when they were like bringing in food, it had to be held in security before it could like pass through the gate.
Yeah.
And you know, you need security clearances, so it's not like any and everyone can go work at the airport. So, you know, those were some hurdles that I had heard of. And then we go into the idea that you know, like the design, the space of, you know, the design of the space couldn't really be what it was because we were restricted to what they tried to emulate, and that was like a Kensington Market replica in the airport. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen it in person.
Yeah.
Because it, you know, it opened and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, it is what it is, man.
How
But
did you
big
also
accomplishment.
figure out pricing? Because one thing that like I still find hilarious, but I still end up giving into, is the inflation of prices at the
Yeah.
restaurants that are in the airports. So what goes into consideration when you are upping a price?
Well, food costs alone is just like, you know, uh phenomenal. And that is a, you know, a variable that affects any costing decisions,
Hmm.
you know? And like when it fluctuates, it's like you can't keep on raising your prices. So you kind of have to anticipate, hey, chicken's expensive. So it's like, you know, you have to formulate it in a way that kind of um includes that in the price,
But for
right?
airports specifically, like I feel there's an airport
Hmm.
inflation that's very specific
You
to it.
know, but with our project in particular, like they tried to, they let us know that, hey, like it can't be like the other restaurants in the airport where it's like, you know, $25 for a burger. Like
Yeah.
they said specifically, like, you know, let's try and keep it um, true to what your pricing is outside of the airport. And if you notice, even Tim Hortons is the same price in the airport than it is outside now.
Hmm.
It's the same. I don't know if it's the same since COVID, but the last time I went, I was like, it was the same price. I'm like, wow, you know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
how it should be, though.
Yeah.
So I think that model worked well because it's just like, I mean, really, what costs are you incurring that would be so much more that it would that it would um, justify,
Yeah,
you know,
I
raising
just
the
I
price
feel
like
like
25%.
restaurants take advantage, and it's like, well, you're stuck here, so we're just gonna charge you an extra $5. And I'm like, fuck
Yeah.
you
But there's
guys.
also now the idea that there's so many options. It's like, you know, I'm not going to go pay $25 for a burger when I can get just like a Tim Hortons bagel for $3
Yeah,
and like, you know, hold me over until I get outside. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. That's
Yeah.
Are there any entrepreneurial tips that you have at the ready?
Um, I feel like, and I guess I started with this, and the idea is that you have to really believe in yourself and that you're able to achieve it. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's
Mm.
like, you are the only person that can actually make things happen. So you have to believe that you can actually do it and not be bombarded with this whole imposter syndrome and like thinking that people think one way or the other about you. And it's just like, your, you know, your success will be in your work.
Hmm.
So, please do not allow that to be a distraction in you trying to live out your dreams in that sense. And like I said, I still have work to do on that front for myself, but I will say that it hasn't ever stopped me from doing something that I wanted to pursue. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
As much as I failed, I feel like gone into a depression about it.
Hmm.
I feel like I've done a lot of work on myself in that, to get out of it and to be able to pursue entrepreneurship again. Whether there was like a 6-month break or a couple years break, like the idea is that I'm still doing it,
Yeah.
and it hasn't knocked me off to a point where I'm like, oh, I'm going to retire at, the government, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's still in me. I still, have dreams, and I feel like, slowly but surely we're chipping away at that idea that, as an entrepreneur, you can make it, and you don't need, corporate to back you in order for you to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
I think being able to handle rejection in a graceful way um, will help you kind of navigate through the negative feelings and the depression, and um, you know to feel your feelings and to acknowledge them and like work through them, but don't let that stop you.
Yeah.
um and the again, just the skill of being able to do your research and like ask for help when you feel like you've reached your limit of your knowledge. So I think that's really important, where it's like knowing when to ask for help, because I think a lot of the things that I've run into, I think could have been avoided had I just had someone to really talk to about it.
Mm, I feel that.
Hmm.
Great advice. Thank you. And I think that is a perfect way to end this episode. So, Flo, thank you so much for coming out and lending your time and sharing your expertise in the realm of entrepreneurship. And
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity, and I am always ready and open to kind of like having these types of conversations, because again, I feel like it's so important to to be able to have that, I don't know, resource, so to speak,
yeah,
just to like find out about things. So, thank you again for the opportunity.
no, no doubt, no doubt. But yeah, other than that, everybody, thank y'all for tuning in. The 2 Degrees podcast brought to you by the Play On Foundation, Flo King, and R&P Home Staging. If you need your home staged and you want to sell that quick, check her out and follow her on Instagram. Check out her website and reach out if you need any help, especially if you plan on starting your own entrepreneurship venture. But other than that, everybody, thank you for coming and mag-ingat kayo.